The new Xiaomi 14T Pro costs less than $600 in a lot of countries, and it's got some seriously impressive camera hardware. The primary lens is not quite a 1-inch sensor, but it is the same 50 megapixel Light Fusion 900 image sensor, same as the one on the higher end Xiaomi 14 and 15. So with this new main sensor, you can capture more light and get more depth of field than a lot of other phones out there, even when compared to a lot of the flagship phones. The 50 megapixel telephoto is missing OIS, and the ultra wide is just 12 megapixels, so on paper, these two other lenses aren't as impressive. But they are more than capable, especially at this price range, and plus we still have the Leica partnership for Leica tuned images. So in terms of camera specs, this triple camera system on the 14T Pro is super promising. It's really tough to find anything technically better than this at this price tag. But how's the actual camera experience? Before I go over that, if you like mobile photography videos like this, I would really appreciate it if you guys can subscribe. It's free for you and it helps a ton for the channel. Okay, let's first go with what this camera system is good at. With OIS and great stabilization, the primary sensor is very reliable. Even if you're in motion, it almost always gets a nice and clean shot during daylight. This is also helped by the really fast shutter speed. This goes for all three lenses, both the telephoto and ultra-wide are also quick to capture. You won't need to wait much for post-processing either. After you take your shot, you can review your picture right there and then. The telephoto lens may not be on the same class as the main sensor, especially for depth, but there's actually not much of a drop-off in maintaining detail, and the color reproduction is identical. It is a bit of a bummer that it's only a 2.6x optical zoom, but I do take most of my shots at that zoom range, so it works out for me. What I was surprised by is the ultra-wide lens. Usually most phones have a huge quality drop off from the main to the ultra-wide, but this phone's ultra-wide looks so good that I had a hard time believing it was just 12 megapixels. It maintains a great amount of detail and especially does a respectable job in low light. I was super impressed by the clean 4K video quality when I was using the ultra-wide for vlogging. It's not as wide as some of the competitors, but honestly I kind of like that since it's not as fishbowl looking. For all these photos, no matter the lens, you'll also see that the picture you took actually looks like what you captured. This is helped by the excellent HDR. Unlike what you see from iPhones or Google Pixel phones, Xiaomi's HDR doesn't overdo it most of the time. So photos look really natural without looking over processed, which I really appreciate. I say most of the time because the HDR does go overboard when there is a harsh light source in the background. You can see that it tried to do a little too much to get all the details and made the foreground subject look super processed. Besides that, the overall colors and details of all the photos I take with the 14T Pro look amazing. Just like what I said about the Xiaomi 14, the Leica tuned processing here is top class. You get very natural color reproduction, clean details, and minimal sharpening without the over-sharpened look you get from iPhones or Samsung phones. I truly think this Xiaomi and Leica partnership produces the best default phone camera processing in the market. The camera app lets you choose either Leica Authentic or Leica Vibrant as your default camera setting. I'm a big fan of both. As you can tell by their names, Leica Authentic gets you natural but also nice and contrasty shots, while Leica Vibrant gets you brighter, more saturated photos. You might think the Vibrant filter is going to oversaturate things, but it gets contrasty and still looks natural with some color boosting. So it's really a matter of personal preference. I've been preferring Leica Authentic for the more dramatic look, but I still love using Leica Vibrant. So those are all the good things about the 14T Pro's camera, but there's a few not so great things that I want to mention. Since there is no OIS for the telephoto, I found its stabilization to be on the sensitive side. You really have to stay perfectly still when shooting with the telephoto. You will get a slightly blurry photo that looks way worse than what it can do at a stabilized position. Of course, during nighttime and low light situations, this is even worse. You need to stay really still for the main and the ultra wide as well. The shutter speed is still relatively quick, but in that short moment you need to be as still as possible or you'll get a blurry image. This can be true on Samsung, Google, and Apple phones too, but I found the 14T Pro's low light stabilization to be a little shakier. What's also sensitive is the auto exposure in low light situations. This phone tends to try to brighten the scene a little too much. It's easy and fast to decrease the exposure by sliding this down, but you'll have to basically do this every time since the auto exposure will almost always try to do a little too much. Thankfully, these are all manageable issues, but the one thing that isn't really solvable is the disappointing digital zoom. After about 1.4x zoom, so from 1.5x to 2.5x, these shots lose a ton of detail. Since this is a 50 megapixel main sensor, I was quite surprised at how bad the digital zoom looked. Even on other phones like my Galaxy S24 Plus with a smaller main sensor, the digital crop shots up till 2x are still pretty good. The 14T Pro's digital crops look really flat with unclear details. Thankfully, the 1x is not too wide like on other phones, so 1x to 1.4x shots still get the shots that I'm looking for. But I love taking shots around 1.5x to 2x, so this was a bit of a bummer. So with all these strengths and weaknesses in mind, here are some simple and easy tips for shooting and editing with the 14T Pro. By the way, I'm not a professional photographer photographer, I don't use pro settings, I don't shoot in RAW, we're just using the basic photo mode, all shot in JPEG format. So let's start with the settings. There's really not much I change here since HyperOS doesn't provide a ton of in-depth options, but what I do make sure is to have auto night mode on. Like I said, the stabilization needs extra guidance, especially for low light shots, so having the help of night mode will make for some better shots at night. I also like to turn on motion capture because even though the shutter speed is fast, moving objects can sometimes seem a bit blurry or not as clear, so this will help with that. Then in preserve settings, I have this on for beautify and AI camera because these are two features I always like to have off, so this makes sure they stay off every time I open the camera app. Okay, so back out to the camera app. Like I said, I like to turn off beautify since I just want natural looking portraits of faces without any filters. If you think the same, just tap this little icon on the bottom and slide it down to 0. I personally also turn off AI camera, which does help optimize your photo depending on what object or situation you're shooting, but I like to have more consistency between all my shots instead of having the software do that for me, so I make sure that this is off. While we're here, I definitely recommend turning on grid lines to give yourself the helpful rule of thirds view when shooting. This is super helpful for framing your shots since the lines help you center, find symmetry, and discover interesting angles with your subjects. I like to turn off HDR on a lot of other phones, but I like to have it on the 14T Pro. Like I said, this phone's HDR doesn't overdo it and helps a ton with your shots without totally changing what you're going for. When taking your shots, I recommend shooting at 0.6x ultrawide, 1x to 1.4x zoom, and 2.6x optical to 3x zoom. I found these to be the optimal zoom ranges for clean images. Anything in between these or more start to look a bit messy or pixelated. When using 2.6x optical or above, definitely make sure to be completely stationary to get the best shots that are stabilized. In low light situations, you have to keep this in mind for all the lenses at every zoom level. And since the auto exposure goes a little wild in low light, I almost always pull down the exposure to about 40% down or halfway. This makes sure your shot's dark areas stay dark and your bright areas are still visible. These shots are already looking clean and they don't really need any edits. But I like to personalize them a bit on Lightroom, so I'll show you guys how I do that, and if you like it, you can save it as your preset too. By the way, I'm using the completely free version of Lightroom, I'm not paying for the premium version. Okay, tap the photo you want to tweak. I like the more dramatic or cinematic look, so that's what we're going to go for here. In the light section, I like to up the contrast even further to about +10 to +15 and the shadows down a bit to about -5. This makes sure the shadows really do look like shadows and lessens noise in those darker areas. Like Authentic sometimes goes for too much of a cool tone, so when that happens, I go to the color section where I like to up the temperature to about +3 to +5 to warm it up just a little bit. While this phone doesn't over sharpen as much as other smartphone cameras, I personally still like a softer look. So in details, I like to put the clarity down to about -10 to -15. This actually helps give even more depth to the photo since the background details get further de-emphasized. Sometimes like Authentic shots look a little cloudy since it's trying to go for a really natural shot, so for that I like to dehaze to about +5. Finally, we always love adding some grain in there to give it a bit of a subtle film look. And yeah, that's basically all the tiny tweaks I do for my 14T Pro's photos. If you like these edits, just save it as a preset on your Lightroom app and you can easily use this for every photo. Alright, that's everything I have to say about the Xiaomi 14T Pro's camera. Let me know in the comments what you think of these shots and what else you want me to cover in the upcoming review for this phone. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you guys on the next video.